She was prepared to marry the most terrifying monster in the galaxy. But instead of claws and fangs, she saw a clumsy human man with oil-stained hands stumbling into her wedding. And that was when the absurd tale of a warrior princess and a lost engineer began. Ethan Cole barely had time to curse before everything around him dissolved into blinding light. 1 second, he was tightening a loose conduit on Relay Station 42B, muttering about faulty Velarian tech. The next, gravity twisted, reality hiccuped, and he landed hard on polished crystal flooring. Ow! Ethan groaned, pushing himself up on his elbows. His vision adjusted just in time to register two things: a cathedral-like hall filled with thousands of alien dignitaries, and the massive holographic projection above him that read in bold, glowing letters, "Unity Binding Ceremony. Groom has arrived." What the hell? A synthesized voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and emotionless. Genetic signature confirmed. The chosen one has entered the binding circle. Initiating matrimonial sequence. Ethan blinked rapidly. Wait, what? No, I'm just here to... His protest died as a sharp, collective gasp rippled through the crowd. A shadow loomed before him. Slowly, hesitantly, he lifted his gaze. There she stood. Princess Niera Velsar. Tall, radiant, and absolutely furious. Her silver-purple skin shimmered under the ceremonial lights, and her piercing blue eyes, glowing faintly, narrowed into slits of pure disdain. The spear in her hand wasn't just decorative. Ethan could tell by the way her fingers twitched around its hilt. Is this some kind of joke? Niera's voice was a blade wrapped in silk, cutting through the stunned silence. Ethan scrambled to his feet, hands raised in surrender, smudges of grease visible on his palms. Hi. I think there's been a mistake. This isn't exactly my scene. You think? She snapped, taking a step forward. The crowd murmured, the tension crackling like static. Before Ethan could backpedal further, a halo of golden light encircled them both. The AI's voice returned, now laced with ceremonial gravitas. By ancient decree, the binding ritual commences. Hold on. Ethan yelped, spinning around to find an exit, any exit. But invisible walls of energy sealed the platform. He was trapped. Niera's grip tightened on her spear. You are not Dravik. You're barely even a male by Velari standards. Hey, Ethan shot back, his nerves forcing a grin onto his face. I'll have you know, on my planet, I'm considered moderately average. A flicker of confusion crossed Niera's face, quickly replaced by disgust. They expect me to bind my lineage to this fragile creature? Trust me, Ethan muttered, glancing at the golden symbols now swirling around them. I didn't exactly RSVP either. The AI's tone grew louder, almost triumphant. Neural synchronization initializing. Heart lines converging. What does that mean? Ethan asked, panic rising. Niera's eyes widened in realization. No, they're activating the mind link. Before Ethan could question further, a surge of energy pulsed through his skull. His thoughts weren't his alone anymore. He staggered, clutching his head as a flood of alien sensations washed over him: discipline, pride, buried sorrow, and a sharp, simmering rage that wasn't his own. Across from him, Niera hissed, her posture faltering for the first time. Her mind was suddenly invaded by chaotic images, a cluttered workshop, laughter over coffee, the quiet hum of a human life filled with simple dreams and quiet resilience. They both stared at each other, breathless. I can feel you, Ethan whispered, horrified and awestruck. Niera's lip curled. Your thoughts are loud and disorganized. Yeah? Well, yours are terrifying, Ethan shot back, rubbing his temple. The golden halo dimmed, signaling the completion of the bond. The AI chimed cheerfully, oblivious to the chaos it had wrought. By the laws of Velorion and the stars beyond, the union is sealed. May harmony prevail. Silence fell over the grand hall, thousands of dignitaries watching the mismatched pair. Ethan exhaled shakily, then glanced sideways at Niera. So, is this one of those quick marriages, or do we at least get cake? Niera didn't respond. She was too busy calculating exactly how many intergalactic laws she'd break if she impaled her new husband on the spot. But deep within their newly forged connection, a flicker of something unexpected stirred confusion, frustration, and the faintest hint of curiosity. The ceremony was over. But for Ethan and Niera, the real ordeal had just begun. Ethan Cole had faced his share of strange days, but being marched through a crystalline corridor by floating drones while mentally tethered to a furious alien princess definitely topped the list. Do you always clench your jaw this much, or is that just for me? Ethan quipped, his voice echoing off the polished walls. The sensation of Niera's irritation pulsed through their mind link like a warning siren. Silence, human, Niera snapped without looking at him. Her strides were graceful, predatory. If I could sever this bond with sheer willpower, you'd already be a distant memory. Charming, Ethan muttered, adjusting the strap on his utility belt. Good to know my sparkling personality is appreciated. They entered a vast chamber where holographic platforms hovered over an endless void. Waiting for them was a sleek, silver AI construct. Welcome, bonded pair, it intoned. Commencing the interspecies synergy trials. Synergy. Ethan raised a brow. That sounds unnecessarily optimistic. Without warning, the floor beneath them shifted. Panels glowed beneath their feet, and from the shadows emerged two combat drones, towering machines armed with energy blades and no sense of humor. Trial 1, Combat Coordination, the AI announced. Niera spun her spear effortlessly, eyes gleaming. Stay out of my way, human. Ethan backed up, eyeing a nearby console. Yeah, no problem. I'll just cheer you on. The first drone lunged. Niera met it head-on, her movements precise and deadly. But as the second drone bypassed her, targeting Ethan, panic surged through him and directly into Niera via their link. She staggered mid-strike. Control your fear? Easy for you to say when you're not about to be skewered. Ethan shouted, ducking under a plasma blade. Thinking fast, he grabbed a loose power conduit from his belt. As the drone advanced, Ethan jammed the conduit into its exposed joint, triggering a short circuit. The machine convulsed and collapsed. Niera dispatched her opponent with a final, elegant thrust. She turned to see Ethan standing over the sparking wreckage, chest heaving. Huff, she muttered, masking her surprise. Beginner's luck. Yeah, Ethan panted, offering a crooked grin. Let's call it that. The AI's voice returned. Trial 2, Emotional Synchronization. The room dissolved into a glowing maze, walls shifting with every step. Symbols floated in the air, puzzles that pulsed in response to their emotions. Great, Ethan sighed. A feelings maze. Just what I needed today. Niera scanned the symbols, her analytical mind racing. These glyphs react to our shared emotional state. We must align our thoughts to reveal the path. Align? With you? Ethan smirked. You're all discipline and rage. I'm caffeine and bad decisions. Then focus, she growled. They moved through the maze, each misstep causing the walls to close in. Frustration flared between them, making the glyphs flicker unpredictably. Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Think, what calms her? A flash of memories surfaced. Niera standing alone beneath alien stars, a rare moment of quiet pride and longing. You hate this marriage as much as I do, he murmured. Niera glanced at him sharply, sensing his genuine understanding. The glyph steadied. Maybe, Ethan continued, if we stop fighting each other, we won't get crushed to death by a mood ring. A reluctant smirk tugged at Niera's lips. The maze responded, parting before them. Acceptable insight, she conceded. They emerged into the final chamber, where gravity twisted unnaturally. Platforms floated in every direction, and up was a matter of perspective. Trial 3, Navigational Harmony, the AI declared. Ethan immediately drifted sideways, arms flailing. I hate space puzzles. Niera launched herself gracefully from platform to platform. Match my movements, human. The bond will guide you. Right, trust the magic brain rope, Ethan muttered, focusing on her intent. As he synced his thoughts with hers, his movements stabilized. They leapt together, navigating the disorienting maze of floating platforms. At one point, Ethan misjudged a jump. Panic surged, but before he could fall, Niera's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Their eyes met mid-air, a silent exchange passing through the link. Annoyance, yes, but also a grudging respect. Don't make a habit of this, she warned, pulling him to safety. I'll try to limit my near-death experiences, he replied, breathless. With a final synchronized leap, they landed on the central platform. The chamber stabilized, gravity returning to normal. Synergy trials complete, the AI announced. Bond integrity, stable. Ethan collapsed onto the floor, staring up at the alien ceiling. That was mildly traumatic. Niera stood over him, arms crossed. You performed better than expected for a human. He glanced up at her, a tired grin spreading across his face. And you're slightly less terrifying when you're not trying to kill me? For the first time, Niera didn't immediately retaliate with a sharp remark. Instead, she offered a nod, barely perceptible, but there. As they were escorted from the chamber, neither spoke. But within the quiet hum of their shared connection, something had shifted. They weren't just bound by accident anymore. They were starting to move forward together. The room was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen or felt. It wasn't built of walls or ceilings, but of swirling light and shifting memories. A soft hum resonated through the air, vibrating in his bones, as if the chamber itself was breathing. "Welcome to the Communion Nexus," the AI's voice echoed distantly, almost like a whisper in a dream. Neural transparency protocol engaged. Ethan barely had time to process that ominous statement before the world around him melted into a cascade of images. Suddenly, he wasn't standing anymore. He was elsewhere. A vast garden stretched before him, but it wasn't vibrant. It was frozen, every leaf, every petal encased in delicate ice. The sky above shimmered with a pale, unnatural glow. As he stepped forward, his breath visible in the cold air, Ethan realized this wasn't just a place. It was a memory. Her memory. In the center of the frozen garden stood a small figure, a young Niera, barely more than a child, clad in ceremonial armor far too large for her slender frame. Alone. Her luminous eyes, dimmer in youth, stared blankly ahead as towering Velari elders watched from a distance, their faces expressionless. Ethan's heart tightened. He could feel it, the weight of expectation, the suffocating isolation. This wasn't childhood. It was grooming. A life shaped to be a tool, a symbol. "You weren't raised," Ethan murmured to himself. "You were forged." A soft crunch behind him made him turn. The adult Niera stood there, her usual guarded expression faltering as she too witnessed her own memory laid bare. "Leave it," she said quietly, but there was no venom in her voice this time, only weariness. Before Ethan could reply, the scene shifted. Now Niera was the observer. They stood in a cluttered workshop, dimly lit by hanging bulbs and scattered hollow screens. The air smelled of metal and old coffee. At the center, a younger Ethan hunched over a half-repaired drone, his brow furrowed in concentration. Outside the small window, stars drifted past, a life aboard some forgotten space station. But it wasn't the loneliness of the scene that struck Niera. It was the simplicity. No guards. No watching eyes. Just a boy and his machines, dreaming not of glory, but of quiet purpose. She tilted her head, sensing the undercurrent of his emotions, a longing not for adventure, but for peace. "You never wanted to be more than yourself," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Ethan gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "Not everyone dreams of saving galaxies. Some of us just want a decent cup of coffee and a day without explosions." The memory flickered, replaced by a tapestry of moments: Niera on battlefields, Ethan in maintenance shafts, victories neither celebrated, losses neither mourned properly. Two lives shaped by forces beyond their control. The swirling lights dimmed as the nexus began to fade, leaving them standing together in a soft void. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "It's strange, seeing the parts of you that no one else gets to see." Niera's gaze dropped, her fingers brushing against a phantom petal from the frozen garden. "It's dangerous, letting someone in." "Yeah," Ethan agreed, rubbing the back of his neck. "But maybe, not always a bad thing." Their eyes met, and for once, there was no sarcasm, no sharp edges, just mutual understanding. The constant hum of resistance between them quieted into something almost calm. Niera exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding for years. "This bond," she began, her voice steady but laced with something gentler. "It may have been forced upon us, but how we walk forward, that choice is still ours." Ethan nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "If we're stuck with this connection, we might as well make it ours." Niera considered him for a moment longer, then gave the smallest of nods, a silent agreement. The void around them shimmered, signaling the end of the communion. As reality reformed the cold walls of the Velaryon facility, replacing the ephemeral dreamscape, Ethan glanced sideways at Niera. "So, partners," he offered, half joking but with genuine intent beneath the words. Niera's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but close enough. "If we must walk this path, then yes. But we walk it for ourselves." Ethan extended his hand, palm up. Niera looked at it, then placed her hand over his, not as a warrior, not as a princess, but as someone finally choosing. "If we have to keep moving," Ethan said quietly, "let's at least move forward for the right reasons." Niera's eyes softened, and in a voice barely above a whisper, she replied, "If we must step forward, let it be for us." And with that quiet promise lingering between them, they left the chamber not as strangers bound by fate, but as two souls beginning to understand the true meaning of freedom. The alarm klaxons were still echoing in Ethan's ears when the truth hit him like a punch to the gut. The so-called bond of unity wasn't just a diplomatic relic, it was a leash. A control mechanism designed by the Velaryon High Council to manipulate both him and Niera, turning them into puppets to enforce peace across two civilizations. "They planned this from the start," Niera growled, her glowing eyes narrowing as streams of classified data scrolled across the hollow screen in front of them. "The mind link wasn't about harmony. It's about control." Ethan leaned over her shoulder, scanning the schematics of the neural relay buried deep within the palace's core. "And let me guess, that big red node labeled Override Protocol isn't for decoration?" A dry voice crackled from a nearby console. "Indeed, sir." Very observant. Ethan glanced at the source, an old, boxy AI unit with flickering optics and a voice modulator that occasionally stuttered. "Arc 7, Niera addressed it. "You served my mother before they decommissioned you. Can we trust you?" "I may be outdated, Princess," Arc 7 replied with a hint of robotic pride, "but I am loyal to Velaryon, not to tyrants hiding behind tradition." Ethan exchanged a glance with Niera. "Good enough for me. So, how do we shut this thing down?" Arc 7 projected a map of the palace's underbelly, a labyrinth of maintenance shafts and security grids. "You'll need to reach the neural control nexus. Expect resistance." "Of course," Ethan muttered. "It's never the easy way." Minutes later, they were crawling through narrow corridors lit only by the glow of emergency lights. Niera moved with practiced stealth, her plasma spear humming softly in her grip. Ethan followed close behind, clutching a modified plasma cutter rigged by Arc 7. "Remind me again why I'm the one carrying the improvised bomb," Ethan whispered. "Because you built it," Niera replied without looking back. "And because I trust you not to drop it." Ethan smirked despite the tension. Flattered. Terrified, but flattered. They reached a security checkpoint where two armored sentinels patrolled. Niera signaled Ethan to stay low. In a blur of motion, she darted forward, disabling one guard with a precise strike. The second turned only to be met with Ethan's plasma cutter discharging point blank. Nice timing, Niera admitted as they dragged the bodies aside. We're getting good at this whole teamwork thing, Ethan replied, his adrenaline masking the fear gnawing at his insides. They pressed on, navigating through traps and automated defenses. Every step demanded unspoken coordination. Niera's combat prowess complemented by Ethan's knack for disarming tech hazards. Finally, they reached the nexus. The chamber pulsed with a sinister light. At its center stood the neural control core, a towering construct of conduits and crystalline nodes, all wired directly into the mind link system. There it is, Ethan muttered. The galaxy's fanciest pair of handcuffs. Before they could move, a voice boomed from hidden speakers. Princess Niera. Engineer Cole. Stand down. A holographic figure materialized. Counselor Varen, the architect of their bondage. You misunderstand, Varen continued smoothly. This bond ensures stability. Personal freedom is a small price to pay for galactic peace. Niera stepped forward, her spear crackling with energy. Peace built on chains isn't peace. It's slavery. Ethan set the plasma cutter to overload mode. And we're not interested in being anyone's puppets. Turrets descended from the ceiling, locking onto them. Here we go, Ethan muttered. Niera launched into action, deflecting energy blasts with her spear while Ethan dove behind a console, rerouting power to disable one of the turrets. Left side. Niera called out through their link. On it. Ethan replied, tossing a charged capacitor that exploded in a burst of EMP, frying two more defenses. They moved as one, thoughts sinking without hesitation. What had started as an unwanted connection was now their greatest weapon. With the last turret down, they sprinted toward the core. Ethan slapped the improvised explosive onto the main conduit. Ready? He asked, breathing hard. Niera placed her hand over his, steady and resolute. Let's end this. They activated the device and ran for cover as the core erupted in a cascade of light and shattering crystal. The mind-link tether snapped. They felt it instantly. A weight lifted, a silence where once there had been constant pressure. When the dust settled, Ethan looked at Niera, expecting triumph. Instead, he saw something deeper: relief, yes, but also determination. We're free, he said, almost in disbelief. Niera nodded, her gaze fierce. Free to choose our own path. Arc 7's voice crackled over their comms. The Council's override protocols are gone. They are scrambling. Ethan leaned against the wall, letting out a breathless laugh. Guess they didn't plan for two stubborn misfits. Niera allowed herself a rare smile. They never do. As alarms continued to blare in the distance, they stood amidst the ruins of the control nexus, no longer bound by fate or manipulation. For the first time, their future belonged to them alone. The council chamber was eerily quiet. No grand speeches, no protests, just the soft hum of ancient machinery and the watchful gazes of 1,000 holographic delegates. Ethan and Niera stood at the center, no longer prisoners, no longer pawns. A projection of the High Arbiter flickered to life before them, its neutral face betraying nothing. You have dismantled the mind-link control system. The Council acknowledges your initiative. As per Intergalactic Charter, you are hereby offered full dissolution of your neural bond. Complete autonomy restored. Ethan felt Niera's presence in his mind fainter now, like a distant echo rather than an intrusive voice. The connection was weak, fragile after the destruction of the core. One final decision would sever it entirely. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Freedom was within reach. Ethan glanced at Niera, expecting her to leap at the chance to reclaim total independence. But instead, he found her watching him not with the guarded disdain she once held, but with something far more complex. "Strange, isn't it?" Ethan said quietly, breaking the silence. "After all that fighting to break free, now I'm not sure I want to lose it completely." Niera's lips curved slightly, a rare softness in her expression. The bond was a chain, but it became a bridge. The Arbiter's voice cut through the moment. "Do you accept dissolution?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "What happens if we don't?" "Partial synchronization will remain," the Arbiter replied. "Unregulated. Voluntary." Niera met Ethan's gaze, her glowing eyes reflecting a quiet understanding. There was no obligation now, only choice. "We've walked through chaos together," Ethan murmured. "Maybe it'd be nice to know someone's still there when things get loud again." Niera nodded once, decisive. "We choose to keep the bond. Not as a command, but as allies." The Arbiter processed this with a blink. "Acknowledged. Autonomy granted. Bond status chosen." As the delegates' holograms faded, Ethan felt the weight of politics lift entirely. What remained was a faint thread between him and Niera, no longer a tether, but a connection they owned. Later, standing on the launch platform overlooking the stars, Ethan watched as a sleek starship prepared for departure. The galaxy stretched before them, vast, unpredictable, free. Niera stepped beside him, her usual armor replaced by a more practical traveler's attire, though the regal air about her remained. "So," Ethan began, stuffing his hands into his pockets, "where to now?" "Anywhere but here," Niera replied, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. They walked toward the ship in companionable silence, the hum of the neural bond a comforting presence rather than a constraint. As they reached the boarding ramp, Ethan hesitated, glancing back at the fading lights of the Velarian capital. "Never thought I'd say this," he muttered, "but I'm glad I crashed your wedding." Niera chuckled, a genuine, melodic sound that caught him off guard. "You were the only unexpected guest worth keeping." He grinned, following her up the ramp. At the threshold, Niera paused, glancing at him with a rare glint of something close to affection. "Freedom," she said softly, "isn't walking alone. It's choosing who you walk with." Ethan held her gaze, the weight of their journey settling into something lighter, something real. "Then let's choose," he replied. Together, they stepped onto the ship, leaving behind crowns, councils, and chains. The stars awaited, and this time, every step forward was entirely their own.